Emma Lenny Benye o Nile Loko. Esiku Dede Asiko yi. Hello everyone, it's Adironke again. I hope your day is going well. Today, I'd like to talk about pronouns in relation to respect and the fact that they are not age-based. So typically when I teach, and me and several teachers actually, when we teach pronouns, we tend to touch on this is the pronoun to use if the person you're talking to is younger than you or the same age as you. And this other one is what you would use if you're talking to one person that is older than you or multiple people, 2+ people. But that's not really the way to teach it. It's sort of the lazy approach. Realistically speaking, there are so many intricacies and diversities in how pronouns are used, and it's so unique that I can't simply do that. I'm about to start my series again, to restart the videos that I've been making on the Yoruba lessons for beginners series, and I'm addressing pronouns next, but it seems like I can't cover all this in that one video because it would be like a 2-hour video or something. So that's why I decided to address this separately. It's the fact that pronouns and respect are not age-based in the Yoruba culture. So you don't respect a person solely because of their age. Age is one of the many factors that can determine what you say, but there are other factors. The determining factors include, and are not limited to, region, the region that you're in, the age difference is just one of those factors, although it's one of the most commonly mentioned. It's just one of those factors. Political, social, or religious position, whether yours or of the person you're addressing, that's also a factor. Relationship, which would include marriage, it could even be friendship and other kinds of relationships, may also determine whether you use honorific pronouns or not. Familiarity is also a factor. Familiarity. Beliefs, so past lives, destiny, whether it's your spirituality, whatever you believe, would also be a determining factor. Choice, and in the expression of gratitude, which would be part of choice, that would also be a factor. Profession or trade, so seller or buyer relationship would also be a factor. I think I have like 3 or 4 other factors that I've prepared slides for. So it's not just this. You will see the rest when I'm done with this, with highlighting these factors. There are several places where honorifics, especially with pronouns, are used to I don't know how do I say it properly in French, to in French versus vous, and you can find hints of honorifics, especially with pronouns in some of these other languages: Brazilian, Portuguese, Hindi, Japanese, Korean. This Wikipedia article sort of highlights them. It mentions Yoruba very briefly regarding age because it's the one that is most addressed. But upon observing these other regions, I can say that the Yoruba system is very, very interesting. Very interesting. Let's start with region. Region being the first factor. So in some regions, they don't subscribe to the idea that you need to use honorific pronouns, irrespective of the person's age, position, any other factor. They don't use honorific pronouns. It's just not in their dialect. It's just not in their language. It's just not in their dialect. So they are very respectful. These regions include Ondo, Owo, and Oyi. Oyi being the acronym for 3 places. I will show you a document, a PDF document that highlights some things, but it's not that they are not respectful. They are quite respectful, and they show respect in tone, gesture, behavior, or attitude, even in the use of honorifics, honorific titles, not necessarily honorific pronouns, but honorific titles. So, Ondo, Owo, Igala, Ishekiri. Let me show you the document. This is like a snapshot of it. A synchronistic, I found this. This is one of the articles, the research works that I found, peer-reviewed, that I found, which doesn't always necessarily mean best, but that I found regarding the regions that don't use honorific. It's particularly these regions. However, there are more. A synchronic study of Yoruba reveals that the standard dialect and almost all its regional dialects display an honorific feature whereby plural pronouns are used to refer to a single entity. Despite the prominence of this feature in the language, however, our study reveals that there are 3 major dialects that do not display the feature. This paper discusses this honorific feature in Yoruba. We use this, I don't like standard dialect, I'll talk about it soon, as well as Ekiti, Moba, Igbomino, and Ijesha dialects to illustrate those dialects that display the feature. Blah, blah, blah. Let me show you the document. On the restricted spread of the honorific pronoun in Yoruba, a case study of Ondo, Owo, and Oyi. Oyi is an acronym for, is it Owe, Owe, or Owe, Yagba, and Ijumu. I'm not sure I'm saying this right. Maybe Owe or Owe. Yagba and Ijumu. My dialect is pretty close. The dialect of where I'm from, Igbajo, is pretty close to Ijesha when it comes to the pronouns. These are the emphatic pronouns, and these are the non-emphatic pronouns. So depending on position, you typically see differences. Omo mi, omo re, omoria, omorin. So this person just basically compared, but I just want to show you where they focus on Ondo specifically. What we have discussed so far about the honorific feature is different. In the Ondo dialect, they say, Kábíyèsí di Ọlọ́run dẹ́mi ẹ̀gún. Di Ọlọ́run mi re mi re. Di Ọlọ́run dẹ́mi ẹ̀gún. Di Ọlọ́run dẹ́mi ẹ̀gún. Lédùmarè adúọ pẹ́náyé. Adúọ. Lédùmarè adúọ pẹ́náyé. Okú ní pa ẹ́. Àrùn ní sọ ẹ́ jọ̀. Àrùn ní sọ ẹ́. I don't speak this dialect. I'm just trying to speak it based off the tone marks that have been placed on it. Suagbo re do re mi. Suagbo do re mi re. Do atoin. Re do re re. Sua re do re 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 re. Sua sheba ko wa do re do mi ko wa pe. I don't speak Ondo. Owo is similar. Kábíyèsí Kábíyèsí, ẹ̀mí á gùn. Anyway, my point is they don't use honorific pronouns. In these phrases, it appears like the person is addressing a king or a monarch. Doesn't have to be a king, could be a queen. Just a monarch. We don't have that king queen thing. I've explained what Oba is in one of my in and of itself videos. So, however, wagbo, wato, washe babangwa, as opposed to egbo, eto, wag. So the same pronoun, irrespective of age, position, social status, wealth status, is just really balanced. It's just this person's approach is that it just didn't, that it was spreading across dialects, but then I don't think that was what they said. I don't think they mentioned that specifically, but from the title it sort of suggests that they're trying to say the spread was restricted. Maybe it started somewhere and it started to spread or something. Well, from the original dialects, we started to disperse into different parts of southwest Nigeria and way beyond, like closer to Delta with the Shekiri, what is now a different country entirely because of the colonizations of these regions, Benin and all that. So, or Benin Republic, even Benin, based on history. So I really don't know, but because we don't know for sure whether it was restricted or originally we didn't have these honorifics at all, but then they just started out of nowhere or something, which I doubt. But yeah, I encourage you to read this article. I might also I suppose come back to read it as well. I'm just going to make sure that I can do that first, because it's not a free article. I had to log in through a student's account. So I'm just going to see maybe I'm just going to make it a critical analysis or something, just so that it doesn't look like I'm just coming to read the whole thing. I'm just going to see what my boundaries are with that. However, I'd like to say, due to Ajayi Crowther's influence on what is considered standard Yoruba in speaking, writing, and approach, the uniqueness of many diverse groups is underexplored in learning. So, the Yoruba that I teach, for instance, is the Oyo dialect or Oyo/Ibadan dialect. Those environs, that present day Oyo state environs, and there are so many different dialects also within that region, but it's majorly Oyo, what was being spoken in the old Oyo kingdom before it became like Oyo state or just your Oyo region, which has like Fulani influence to it, because there were like some wars and some economic problems, and we can talk about the destruction of the old Oyo kingdom later. But the Yoruba that I speak is really close. There are some major changes, but with many things it's really close to what they were speaking then. So due to Ajayi Crowther's influence, because that was the dialect that he put into writing, that became the most common. And also there was a time when the Yoruba people had to come together. It was in the late 18th/19th century where we started to, I suppose, adopt that general Yoruba identity, that general Yoruba name, although the name came from Oyo. So Oyo has a upper hand anyway with many things, with how Yoruba is thought, even in the higher institutions. There are research articles here and there and studies here and there, but when it comes to actual documentation, the documentation is done in the Oyo dialect. So it's not the standard, it's just the common. It's just the common Yoruba. It's the common Yoruba, not the standard. Nothing makes the Ekiti dialect or the Ife dialect substandard to that dialect, to the Oyo dialect. So that's just one thing to note. It's Oyo. So try to refrain from, and I'm learning that as well, even as I explore my own dialect from where I'm from. Try to stay away from saying standard and just say the common Yoruba when you are referring to this dialect that we speak and teach. Typically, almost every Yoruba person can speak the Oyo dialect, which is the common dialect. Oyo dialect takes a bit from here and there, but it's all within that region and their own dialect. So typically, because of education and many other factors, we have sort of learned to speak our dialects from where we're from and the Oyo dialect. And we use the Oyo dialect to communicate generally. I don't like how other dialects are treated in the media too, like in entertainment. The people who speak these diverse dialects are like the clowns of the Yoruba movie industry. They're like the comedians. So the dialects, the other dialects are supposed to be funny, it seems. You know, the Eko dialect, the one that is spoken in Lagos, is not really too far off from the Oyo dialect, with me and mo being the difference. Me today as opposed to mo today. The Eko will say me, Sale Eko area. The Oyo will say mo. But with the Ijesha, Ijebu, they are like the Ijebu, Ijesha, Ekiti, Igbomina. They are like the clowns. And typically, I don't think they write scripts, but typically people will just freelance. And what is it called when you just come up with a line in drama? And they will say something along the lines of, but you've been in Lagos all this while, or you've left the village all this while. You should now know how to speak the regular dialect instead of this rubbish dialect that you're speaking. I've watched several movies like that where those comments have been made, in which they would just ridicule these diverse dialects. So one day we will talk about that. I feel like I've spent the whole time just discussing region, but region is a major factor. Region is a major. I actually watched a play yesterday, and I can find it, where somebody was being ridiculed for their non-Oyo dialects. But I would have to, in a few movies it's celebrated and those people's opinions are respected, but in 90% or 95% of the movies, once the person starts to speak this other dialect, they will say, I don't understand what you're saying, or you're not making sense. They would try to dismiss them. I don't like that in the media. We'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, age is the next factor. And this is the common one that we typically say. When you're addressing one person that is younger than you or your age mate, you use singular pronouns. But if they're older than you, use plural pronouns. The plural pronouns are honorific pronouns. Just in case you're wondering, what are honorific pronouns? They are the plural pronouns. Like they, when you address, like in English, they, when you're addressing multiple people, we would say they, our own version of like they, when we're addressing one person that is older. If the person is older than you, you address them like multiple people. Again, one person that is younger than you, you would use a singular pronoun for, because they are one person. One person that is your age mate, singular pronoun. So one person anyway. But once they're older than you, something changes. You will address them as if you're addressing two or more people. You'll use a plural pronoun because you'll be addressing them and their higher self. You'll be addressing them as if you can see their higher self. So age is also a factor. You and your higher self are what I'm honoring, what I'm respecting. I'm honoring you, and I'm also honoring your higher self. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Political or social position is another factor. Political or social position. And in a few factors like this one, you find that they supersede age. They overthrow the age factor. So let's say my child becomes a monarch or a presider in the next 50 years. Let's say my daughter becomes a monarch. And there are existing female monarchs. I think there's one in Ekiti. There's one in... Despite patriarchy, despite different things, there are female monarchs still existing. Not just in religious position, but in social, political positions too. It's not that they have real political power, but they have access to the people who have real political power. So if my daughter, let's say, becomes the Oba of Igbajo in the next 50 or 100 years, not necessarily tomorrow, let's say, I still have to use honorific pronouns for her. When I get to her presence, I still have to kneel a courtesy before her. So the Oni of Ife, for instance, still has both parents alive. In his presence, they still have to kneel. They still have to prostrate for the man, kneel for the woman. They still have to use honorific pronouns while addressing him or referring to him. So, see? Then the Are or no, Kakamfo, the generalismo, the military generalismo. Also, it doesn't matter if is my younger brother. Still have to use honorific pronouns for him. Chiefs as well. If I become and this is not just, okay, maybe servant ruler relationship. It doesn't matter if you're a servant or you're a doctor of whatever. You still have to use honorific pronouns. Ijoye as well. Ijoye as well. Use honorific pronouns for them. In some regions, well, I think it would be majorly those regions that I've mentioned that don't even use honorifics at all, regardless. So, and then the Ogboni, the Araba, even Agbalagba. When you get old, even people that are old like you but are also older than you would use honorifics for you. You know, when you get to a certain level, socially speaking, doesn't matter if the person is younger or older than you, they just use honorifics for you. Traditionally speaking, I know that certain things have changed, but traditionally speaking, when you get to a point in the society, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. And also, the Oba, just going back to this, may also refer to his own parents without using honorific pronouns. He has that ability. He can if he wants to. So the Are no Kakanfo may use honorific pronouns for the king, but may choose not to use it for anybody else. You know, I think that's where the choice factor comes in, which I'll address soon. There's also the choice factor, in which largely people just do what they choose. based on one or two factors. There are multiple factors that typically contribute to that. So, but anyway, ìyáláwo bàbá lóríṣà. If my bàbá lóríṣà is older than me, is younger than me, actually, I can still choose to address him with honorific pronouns only. Parent, grandparents. If you pay attention, you may notice that even amongst people that are parents that are of the same age, honorific pronouns are still used. So let's say your parent and my parent are of the same age, they were in the same class in the university, and they meet again, they would use honorific pronouns for each other. It's interesting. They would even kneel before each other. Epelema, eshema. They are of the same age. They are of the same age. They were in the same class. They used to bake together in the local river, but they will still kneel because now they are mothers. They believe that they've attained a much different social position from the last time they saw. So they would kneel before each other. They would courtesy before each other. They would bow sometimes. They would tilt their heads before each other. And they're of the same age. So again, there are intricacies. It's hard to really say, okay, this is the one factor that would determine when honorifics are used. Many interesting factors. Even arugbo, people that are really, really old, even if they are not necessarily seen as elder statespeople or something, but they're really, really old. People that are just as really, really old as they are would also use honorific pronouns for them. It's pretty interesting. I might be 85 and you might be 90. We may still choose to, you may still choose, because you're 90, to use honorific pronouns for me. Just based on the fact that I'm really, really old as well. I won't say shoti jeun. I'm 90. You're 90, by the way. And I'm 85. You may not say shoti. You would say sheeti jeun. So position, political, social, and religious position would really determine. Even Aruba, that might just be like 17 years old or 18 years old or 20 years old. I might be 45 and still choose to say erara ekabo when I see her. I'm 45 and she's 20. But I may still choose to say that because I'm no longer just looking at her based on age. I'm now seeing her based on something else, based on our social or religious position. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Relationship is the next one. This one is pretty interesting. I might be 25, married to a 75-year-old man, and sometimes choose not to address him with honorific pronouns. But maybe in the presence of my in-laws or something, to keep up appearances, I might use that. But in the other room, I can say Wambi. So at that point, I'm pretty sure there would be no argument. There won't be, are you talking to me like that? You, this 25-year-old young woman. When you start to pull the man's beard, see Opolo Baba, Toti Shakolo, Taporonu Baba, Toti Bodolo. It won't say, but I'm 75 and you're using a non-honorific pronoun. It would just succumb to the activities of the other room. So yeah, there are different factors like that. And I might be 50, married to a 30-year-old man, and choose to use honorific pronouns for him. Rather than saying wa, I would say ewa is 25 and I'm 50, or it's 30 and I'm 50. But I may still choose to. You know, based on the now really patriarchal system, that may be the factor for that. That may be the factor for that. But again, people just do what they want. When they're in the public, they just align with whatever the societal expectation is. But when they're in their homes or in the other room, they may just do whatever they want to do. Nobody cares. So it's really dependent. When ewa kini wa mabo. You want to tell me, we say mi o wa mo juelo gbonran, but who cares? So, and another factor is marriage. That's marriage / relationship. The previous slide, this factor is marriage. So there's something there. We discussed the marriage culture, but we don't always discuss the post-marriage culture as much. When a woman gets married into a family, you marry the family, you don't really marry the husband. That's another thing. You're married to the husband, but you're married to him and his family. So there's a thing that goes on post-marriage or even pre-marriage in which you would woo the in-laws. And give them nicknames. So if you're really, really young, maybe not teenagers, I think that's like the age group. If you're not teenagers yet, they're babies or they're really young, you would use hypocorisms or pet names to address them. You won't address them by their first name. So you can give them different names. You can give them if they're female, you can give them, not necessarily though, it's now that we are now gendering all these names. Some of them were not gendered initially. So anyway, you can give them akpobekore. If you could give them adumaradan or adumadan. You can give them ojuloge. You can give them eyin funjowo, ibadiaran. There are many names like that. You might even tease them. Now they are akowe kowura. I think I have a video on pet names actually, but I think that one was devoted to lovers. No. I think I have one on pet names. And if they are, it will be fine to use non-honorific pronouns when they are this young, but once they are teenagers and above, you would use, traditionally speaking, you would use honorific pronouns for them, and you won't call them by their first name. You call them by their oriki, the one they were given at birth, or whatever pet name you choose to use for them. Ibadiaran, ilekedi, aguntasho. If it doesn't matter, they could be a woman too. If they're tall, akuru yejo. If they're short, just give them whatever pet names you find fitting for their character or for their appearance. So that's another factor. It would be fine to use non-honorifics for this category, but once teenagers and above, you would use honorifics. That is if they're already existing. So if anybody births any other child afterwards within that family, then you can refer to them as their first name. But for children, despite the fact that they are younger than you, mind you, they are younger, even the teenagers are younger, you will still give them pet names and hypocorisms, and you would woo them. I don't know if wooing is the proper term, but there should be a proper term for it, for for that. So you can see that age is not a factor always, you know. For the men, I think because of the patriarchal system, wooing in-laws is a choice for them. Just in case you're a man and you're wondering, so do I have to do that as a man? It's a patriarchal system now. So it's really dependent on you if you want to use honorific pronouns for your wife's younger sister or their younger family members, the ones that are younger than you anyway. It's really dependent. In the beginning, we didn't have like patriarchy, matriarchy, skolokepachi. It was just survival hierarchy. It was just based on survival system. Nobody cared. But then at some point, it seemed like the men were misbehaving. They were trying to exclude women from certain things, from rulership or from having any real economic or political power. I find that even with religious power too, they were trying to restrict the position of women. But something happened around the time that was really interesting. I was trying to find the Yoruba name for it, but a part of it is what I think is it the Hindu or Bengali, what they call Kundalini awakening, the rise of the divine feminine. So the women started to embrace their power, and there were many associations and groups formed in which women just harnessed all kinds of spiritual power. I think using spiritual power was how they were now able to reestablish themselves in the economy and things like that. So the Ajay was formed, the concept of Ajay, and shape shifting. Women harnessed a lot of shape shifting powers at the time, and they could transform into different things, to birds, to I think cats as well, to anything, to vultures, to whatever they want. Okay, those would be birds too. Let me not make a fool of myself. To whatever they wanted, to theirs, and even in the political sphere too. Even for some who didn't have these powers, women in general were doing things that they had never done before to protest misogyny. So some women would remove their blouses and they would come together, remove their blouses, and march half naked to the king's palace, or even naked sometimes, depending on the intensity. And I think the men found that extremely frightening. It was like the women had gone crazy in some regions. It was really weird. It wasn't something they were particularly used to. It wasn't something that level of feminine protest against misogyny. So, but then after, and it seemed like it started even tilting to matriarchy, not with rulership, because that one was really hard to tackle, but it seemed like women were still recognized. In some kingdoms you would see that they would depict birds. For some, the birds indicate Pirilologonji, so Olongo is what sometimes those birds signify. But in some kingdoms, those signify women, witches. Not witches per se. What's the English name for Ajay? Great mothers. Not witches, because the word witch is problematic. Funny, I've addressed it myself, but that just came because I'm speaking English. It's not witch. Ajay is not witch. I've addressed that as well. As a result of interaction, I think from like the 13th, even as far back as like the 11th century, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, up until this point, from Portuguese slave traders to the Malians in Oyo to the Fulani in Ilorin, Oyo, Oshun, to the Europeans, all these cultures being like really patriarchal, patriarchy kind of just came to stay. So it seemed like women are still respected, you know, in some, but it's still very patriarchal, and misogyny still exists in many forms. Even in spirituality, even in the indigenous spirituality, you know, there are some, even the Odwifa is not completely free from that misogynistic era. It's not completely free. But that's for another day. And it just seemed like, okay, we started to tilt back to patriarchy again, you know, especially since all these cultures and the attached religions sort of promote the women be submissive kind of thing. So those who are smart still try to put like one token of a woman in the associations. In political, social, and spiritual spheres, there will still be like one or two women present. Even with chieftaincy, there would be one or two women present, you know. They won't exclude women completely the way that they tried to at some point, but it nothing has really been the same, you know. So when it comes to marriage, the choice is very much the husband's, whether he wants to reciprocate the honorific pronouns with his in-laws. Choice. Familiarity is another factor. If I don't know you that well, let's say you're traveling, and I'm using alien because there were really strange characters. To be honest, if we really do that research, if somebody tells me that there were extraterrestrials present, that they made appearances a few times, I would believe. Because there are some descriptions that are just like, the way you're describing what you saw, that doesn't even look like the way that a human would look, you know. So strangers, even if they look or sound like they might be younger than you, you're still supposed to use honorific pronouns. So let's say I'm addressing you and I don't know you. I don't know if I'm older. I don't know if you're younger. I don't know if I would use honorific pronouns regarding. You might be two. I hope there are no 2-year-olds watching my videos on YouTube, because you're kind of young, except your parents are like teaching you. But you might be in the womb. If I don't know you, I'm still going to respect you, honor you with honorific pronouns. If I don't know, if you've arrived at my village, ẹ káàbọ̀, ẹ ǹlẹ́, ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́, ẹ kúrìn, ẹ rọra. I don't know you. You look like you would be younger than me, but I will still, because I don't know who you are. If you look at the tales with strangers, especially back in the day when there was just limited, well, I won't say, but that was way in the beginning. Sometimes even if I would say somebody's coming, prepare for, let's say something is happening, if I may even talk about the person way before they come in, somebody is coming, this and that are what they are going to contribute to your town. This is what you shouldn't say to them when they arrive, blah blah blah. That is why typically in many regions, if it's not like now where it's much different, but back then, if a stranger came in to the village, you would take them to the Bale. The Bale would be responsible for finding out why they're there. Again, way in the beginning, when people coming in, people migrating were not that many. People were just staying where they were. They were not really, well, they did explore, but it wasn't really necessarily to live there or something. But for the ones, especially the ones who would came to live or something, they would want to find out where are you from? Why have you come here? Are you here to stay or something? If I don't know you anyway, if you're not familiar, I would use honorific pronouns when addressing you. Another interesting factor is belief. Belief, especially because we believe in past lives, spirituality, destiny, life path, all these things. So a father might birth a child, but after doing the esentaye or akosejaye or whatever divination you want to do pre or post the birth of the child, the father might come to learn that the daughter is actually his mother returned, and that there's something she is trying to teach him even as a child, or there's something he has to teach her even as her child, or as his child. So there are different factors. So the father may fluctuate between honorific pronouns and non-honorific pronouns. Honorific pronouns when he is reciting uriki, just praising her and honoring her because he knows that that's his. She may not know, except she's told, but he would know that, yeah, I've been told you're my mom. So when he's praising her and honoring her and all that, he may use honorific pronouns. But then the next day, he may also choose not to use honorific pronouns and just use non-honorific pronouns. You know, there's no like fixed thing to it. So, and then sometimes even if I find my spirit mate, like my egbe mate or something, I might, and they are the leader, I suppose that would also be a religious position, but not necessarily. If I know you from like a past life or something, I just know that you're here to do something for me in which you're acting as my guide. You know, I may choose to use honorific pronouns when addressing you. You might be 20 and if I see you, I may say Baba mi ekabo. I might be 50 and it might be 20. But because I know who you are, spiritually speaking, I might say Baba mi ekabo. Ekuri. Enle. Epele. You know, I might. So yeah, those factors. Another is just point blank choice. So you would find parents or just anybody in general, irrespective of age, use honorific pronouns when they're expressing gratitude, pride, and homage. So sometimes, just solely based on choice, if a person that is way younger than me say something that is way beyond their age, I might say esheun modupe. If I'm walking by and I see a child that looks like they might just be 7, and I'm walking past and they tell me, maybe they're clairvoyant, psychic, and there are lots of those. There are lots of, because of these religions, we're suppressing it in our children. We're suppressing clairvoyance and their psychic abilities. But I know that there will be a revolution at some point. If they're 7 and I'm like 57, and they say, Ibi to nlo yen ma lo be o. I wouldn't say, who does this one thing? Tebati debe. Let's say I wanted to give somebody 5 naira, and they say tebati debe, e ma fun won ni naira marun, ogun naira ni ke fun won. Or they may even say tobati debe, ma fun won ni naira marun, ogun naira ni ko fun, and they just walk past me. I wouldn't say, who are you talking to? I'm like 45 and you're like 7. That what I've just said is, when you get there, don't give the person 5 naira like you wanted to. Give them 20 naira. And I'm like, one, I've not even told anybody that I'm going anywhere. And I've not told anybody the amount. How does this child know? I won't say, Talombawi. I'll say, esheo. You know, I might choose to say that to thank them, because it's not the 7-year-old kid that is my business. It's their higher self that is giving me instructions, or my ancestor or a shared ancestor that is giving me instructions through them. So choice. Sometimes, if it might be somebody graduating, they'll say, eshe. You see a lot of that, parents putting their heads on their children's chests and just using honorific pronouns and stating their oriki. And so it's choice, but it's typically used when choice is involved. It's typically used to express gratitude, pride, and homage. And sometimes even when somebody that is older does something that is ridiculous, that is stupid even, you may choose not to use honorific pronouns. Let's say you find that somebody that has a high social position is a pedophile or something. You won't say, you won't say, you say, so it's now my choice to demote that person because they are not worthy of the honorific pronoun. They are a disgrace to themselves. So, choice. Profession or trade is another factor. Profession or trade. If a TV or radio presenter, let's say, is addressing their guest or even somebody in the audience or something, traditionally speaking, they don't use non-honorific pronouns. I know clearly that this person is like my child's age, but I won't say bami, say ebawa dide, kebawa sọ̀rọ̀ sí nǹkan tó ń lọ yìí. Ebawa fohùn sílẹ̀ lórí ètò yìí. So sometimes I might be a trader and the person that wants to buy from me is looks like they might be 10 and I'm like 50. If they say, why is it so small? I'm not buying that for 10 naira. That's so small. I might say, eba mira, oko mi, eba mira, o ti wọ́n ni. Eshe, ṣé fún mi lóúnjẹ ni? Don't you want to feed me? So don't you want, they would just help buy from me, my father, my husband, my darling, just coaxing them in order to convince them. So there are the other professions like that. I didn't want to obsess over it, but those were the two scenarios that I instantly remember that honorific pronouns are critical. So you can see, can you see now that it's a lot more than age? It's a lot more interesting than age. There are other factors that include and are not limited to history or storytelling, divination, death, sarcasm, etc. With history or storytelling, if I'm talking to somebody about the story of Kunomi of Ijayi, I won't say, I may not say, nígbà tí wọ́n wá lọ sí Ọ̀yọ́ tí wọ́n lọ bá àwọn ará Ìbàdàn pé kí wọ́n má jà mọ́, àbí nígbà tí tó kógun lọ bá àwọn Ìbàdàn, nígbà tó lọ bá àwọn tọ̀yọ́ jà, nígbà tí this is one person that is older than me, but I would use they're obviously older than me. They lived several decades before now, but I would still choose not to because I don't have to. Even in the Odifa, tó dífá fún Ọ̀rúnmìlà, nígbà tó ń tìkọ̀lé ọ̀run bọ̀ wálé ayé, I won't necessarily say nígbà tí wọ́n ń tìkọ̀lé ọ̀run bọ̀ wálé ayé, wọ́n wá Nígbà tó ń tìkọ́lé ọ̀run bọ̀ wálé ayé, ó jókòó, ó ronú. See, I don't have to. Because they are not human anymore. They've taken a different form. So it doesn't really matter. I can if I want to, but I don't have to. I don't have to. I don't have to. Or I'm talking about the story of a man and the tortoise. I would say, nígbà tọkùnrin náà jókòó, nígbà tó jókòó, torí jàpá, ó wá sọ fún jàpá pé kó wá. Òun náà wá jókòó. I don't have to use honorifics. So that's just something you would observe. Don't say, you're talking about the story of Obatala. Why are you using non-honorific pronouns? If there's anything we've learned so far, it is using honorific pronouns may not always be tantamount to respect or disrespect. Not using honorific pronouns may not always be tantamount to respect or disrespect. Using or not using may not always be equal to respect or disrespect. It depends on the factor. With the king factor or the monarch factor, the queen factor, I may choose not to, but that would be tantamount to disrespect. And they don't have to, even if I'm older than they are age-wise, they don't have to, a current incarnation age-wise, they don't have to, but it's not really tantamount to the fact that they're disrespecting me either. If a king chooses to use non-honorific pronouns for his parents, it's not tantamount to disrespect either. So don't say, oh, because you're talking about the story of Orunmila without using honorific pronouns, that means that you're disrespecting Orunmila. Or no. Divination is another thing. Divination. So if I'm divining, even if I'm talking to somebody that is older than me and I'm really into it, I don't have to say, and there's always there might be a bit of mediumship going on as well, even at that point. I don't have to say, depending, and you would know, I don't have to say, if I'm talking to one person that is older than me, but once I take another form, I don't have to. Even Egungun as well, if an Egungun is relaying a message, I might be the Yagun, and I might have the opportunity to know who is under the or I might be a member of that particular Oje family. I might know who the person is. I might know that that's my baby cousin, my younger cousin, or my youngest cousin, and I'm the Yagon. He might use O for me, because at that point they are no longer my baby cousin or my younger cousin or my anything. They are now my ancestor personified, and they are relaying a message. I've explained what Egungun is as well, that it's a form of, even mediumship does not do justice to what it is, but if you understand what mediumship is, then you understand an aspect of it. Death and the dead. So death may also be a factor in which somebody's, it depends. You may choose to and you may choose not to. If they're younger, let's say they were your child, the mourning mother might say something along the lines of, you didn't tell me this was how you wanted to treat me, to do me, to handle me. Ṣèlérí fún mi pé máa fi mí sílẹ̀ ní rèwerèwe, pé máa tètè lọ, something like that. And some other cases as well, it might be some children whose father or grandfather has passed away. They might also use non-honorific pronouns and say, ṣé bá ṣe jọ sorry, ṣé nǹkan tó sọ fún mi rè, or sunre, rather than something like sunre or something, they might say sunre. They're older, of course that was their father or their grandfather, but they will say sunre, not sunre, they say sunre. They are not including an honorific. They are choosing not to, because it doesn't matter at that point. It's not that you're disrespecting them and their higher self, but it's like the opposite. You're not seeing them as their singular self, which is just like their higher self, as opposed to the fact that, okay, in the past, when you used to address them, you address them that way because you were seeing them as them and their higher self. In this case, their incarnation self is dead. They are no longer your. They are no longer just like your grandfather or something. They are something else. So now you're just seeing them as a singular entity, their spiritual self, their higher self. And that is why you can use non-honorific pronouns or singular pronouns. Sometimes sarcasm as well. You know, if you say something to your parents, they might say, ah, eh. The parent says, wa. And the child says, mi wa. The parent might sarcastically say, ah, eh, wa. Eti binu. Epele, ema binu. It's sarcasm. That will make the child feel bad for doing that. It's sarcasm. But it's intended to make the child rethink what they've just done. For you to rethink what you've just done. By yelling at your mother or your father. To say, ah, eti binu. Ema binu. Epele o. Ah, mo pe ko ye ka pe yin. Epele. Eti binu. They are being sarcastic. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that there are several other factors. I didn't want to let this video go. I think I was just overthinking like the different scenarios. But these are the factors. If I think of more, just check. I'll pin them in the comment section. So yeah, apart from those, history, divination, storytelling. If you have any questions regarding this, please don't hesitate to ask. If there's anything that you'd like to share, probably based on your own personal experience or something, I'd really like to know. And I look forward to your support by liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing if you've not subscribed yet. And I thank you for whatever forms that you choose to help me grow this channel. I really thank you. And I'll see you in the next video. I will do I don't want to, because I might just do shorter videos after now. But I intend to do the video on pronouns really soon, so that we can look into the pronouns for, well, I won't cover all Yoruba dialect pronouns. I will just do the common Yoruba pronouns. What is the Oyo dialect but is regarded as the common Oyo, Ibadan, or your state area combined infused dialect, and just use that to teach. And then some other time we can look at the article, the dialect article, and just explore diverse dialects and their pronouns. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and bye for now.